Hey, I'm Kathleen from Catalytic, and I have a special guest joining us on today's episode of Catalytic Kids. But before I introduce him, let me just remind everyone that Catalytic Kids focuses on empowering parents to train their children toward building great character, financial savviness for a healthy financial future, as well as entrepreneurship from an early age, something I started with my own girls over 20 years ago, and something that I've continued with teens and millennials for over a decade. I hope you take away a few nuggets from our time together and what you can do with your own kiddos in the area of character development, money smarts, and entrepreneurship. So I was blown away recently when I saw something called Financial Freedom, the Financial Freedom Program for developing money smart and entrepreneurial kids, which I've linked in the description below. The Financial Freedom Program includes so many of the same concepts and tools that I've used over the years, but here they're all laid out for parents in two beautifully empowering and engaging courses, one for kids and one for teens. So parents no longer have to figure all of this out on their own, like I did. Plus, there are money-making opportunities included in the program for both the parents and the kids. So let me introduce to you Beejel Parmar, who is the CEO of Financial Freedom. Welcome, Beejel.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited about this episode and to talk to you not only about the Financial Freedom program for kids and teens, but to find out more about your own family's journey with financial literacy and entrepreneurship, because that's what this podcast is about.
Let's go. There's a lot to cover.
Yes. Well, I mean, and I think you're gonna be able to just share a ton with this first question, which is, would you give us a bit of your history and how it ties into, financial education, financial literacy, but also into the Financial Freedom Program and how it came to be?
Well, it really starts with not being financially literate, ironically. So graduated with a degree in aerospace, so could do all that stuff. My dad was a banker, which kind of made me, I was always anti-money, but seeing him, work with his finances and statements every month, I kind of I turned my back on that whole subject, probably, through school. It's like, that's my dad's stuff, And so graduated, got a job. But very early on, I kind of fell into personal development. And when you kind of fall into personal development and you're reading all these kind of motivational books, you kind of think you know better than some other people on the planet. Okay, you think your next thing could be the next $1 million business. So in many ways, I didn't follow the fundamentals of finance. I didn't follow the fundamentals of wealth. And one of the reasons why I'm such a kind of champion for this subject now is because realizing that I wish if I could go back in a time machine and teach myself something, it'd be to learn these fundamentals at a very early age, not just in the space of money, but money, mental health, mindset, relationships, emotional intelligence. These are the building blocks of life that if you look at what's being sold in terms of courses to adults, they basically fall into one of these, what we call 5 buckets. The irony is that none of these 5 buckets are really being taught well, if at all, at the key ages that the kids need to start learning these things. So the fundamentals of successful living are not being taught. So really my journey with this starts with, well, I never got this. And I spent a lot of money in my adulthood learning this stuff. But a lot of the stuff is based on beliefs and habits, which got far easier to start developing at a younger age. So that's kind of mission-driven purpose for being here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your why is amazing. And I totally agree with you that, I work with adults as well. So helping adults unlearn behavior and habits when they're adults is so much harder than trying to instill good habits and good, financial behavior, but also like you're talking about, even the emotional intelligence and how to handle certain things, and trying to help your kids do that from a younger age. It's going to help them avoid a lot of the pitfalls that adults run into. So you didn't learn a lot of that when you were young. So, what did you do with your own kids?
So it was kind of a little bit by destiny. So we were living in the US. This is back in between 2000 and 2010. We just went through a really rocky time. We were spending a lot of money trying to get our immigration status in place. A few businesses didn't go well. Whenever we'd made money, I'd kind of reinvest it back into a kind of a business venture. And really, it was a challenging time financially. We had many years in that period, which was really challenging. 2010, we had to leave the US because of immigration. So we pretty much sold everything. We are from the UK. My family's from the UK. My daughters were both born here. But we decided to do something different. We decided to kind of travel, and we basically picked India and Asia as the places we wanted to explore. We thought it'd be away from the US maybe a year. Ended up being 5 years kind of traveling there. But during that time, we were global schooling. We'd kind of go to different countries. So like homeschooling, but just different parts of the world.
Right.
And so a lot of their core foundational learning happened to be in real life experiences. They're meeting adults, coming to events. So they were getting exposure to a lot of the fundamentals. But the one area that I didn't teach them, and I didn't know I wasn't teaching them, was really about money. And it was only when kind of I got introduced to financial that I realized it's kind of aha moment. Like, I haven't really taught them anything about money. So my daughter, when she went through the kids content, she said, I think I've learned more about money in the last 24 hours, because she did like a crash course in the content, than I have in my entire life. And this is coming from I think she was training when she started. And same for me. When I went through the program for the very first time, I was like, I wish I knew this stuff. It's like, now these topics are more familiar to me, but imagine if we had just understood these as young people, and then as young adults, and developed the discipline of money from that age. I always go back to the compounding. And I was telling my kids that, look, if you just start saving, I think it was like $300 per month over the next 25 years, starting off with about $3,000, in seed capital, and just did the basics, just did the fundamentals, right? Picking a good index fund, you'll have somewhere called about $500,000 in your account. Now, on top of that, you can build your businesses, you can build, your career. But if you put the fundamentals in place, the foundation, you're going to be far ahead of the game compared to where I was, and maybe even where I am even today.
Yeah, absolutely. I started teaching my own kids from the age of 7. So I did work with my kids, and then building from there on the teachable moments. And interestingly, I asked my 28-year-old the other day about, what did you think going through it? And she said, Mom, I really can't, it's like, there's no revelation to me, because when we were going through it, it was just what we did. It was life. To me, it wasn't any different than anything else. It was just, you made it part of our life. And so I had no idea that no one else would, that not that many people did this. And it wouldn't have even crossed my mind, because it's just the way we were raised. And I'm like, that's such an interesting point. But then I took a financial class in 2010, and I realized I could then teach that exact class, but it was geared for high schoolers, to the high schoolers. So I started teaching high schoolers personal finance, because if you can get them even as teens, you do not have to start at 7. You have more runway from the younger age, so you have more time for the teachable moments and everything. But even if you can get them at high school, or wherever your kids are, before they go into young adulthood or into adulthood, it makes such a difference. I'm in fact working with 2 older Gen Zers, but they're both a college graduate, and one who's in college right now, because the parents came to me and said, could you teach our kids this before they get too far in? And it's just so important, because it's with you for your whole life, right? So what would you say to parents who think, I'm not sure this is for me or for my kids?
The key thing here is really not about them becoming business tycoons, right? It's when we can make learning practical and relevant, they're going to learn better, in my experience. So when you're learning in a tactical experience, like doing stuff that feels real, the learnings become real. So it's not about winning or losing. It's about what can we learn through the experiences. So as kids are building their businesses, we call them businesses, but income streams, whatever you want to call them, they're going to have real life challenges: supply and demand, sales, no sales. We had a family in Ireland, a family of 4. The oldest girls, I think, were 7 and 6 when I interviewed the family. They bought the program, started a car washing business. Several months later, a few months later, there's a ban, hose pipe ban. So they had to learn how to pivot right? And not to
Uh,
look at that as a setback and just, okay, great, what do we do next? And they started 4 businesses now that now they've kind of getting into monthly recurring revenue. So these concepts, which even today most adults can struggle with, kids can learn naturally. And like you said, for them it'll be natural. They
right.
won't know the difference between, oh, this is not normal. For them it'll be normal, being able to take something on, face a challenge, and then pivot and switch and start something new. Most adults, something a crisis happens, and they fall apart. People lose their jobs, and now they don't know what to do with themselves. So we're teaching these kids these real life lessons in the
Mhm.
hopes that as they mature and grow into teens and young adults and adults, that the same skills they've learned can be applied no matter what they do, whether they just have a great career or a great job. But knowing, having a better relationship with money from the get-go is really the key here.
Yeah, and being able to create multiple income streams, and protect yourself and protect your family as things come down the pike, right? And financial is not just, I mean, yes, financial, and some of what you did and what I did was, this entrepreneurial piece to it, but even just the financial piece alone is going to have such great value and empowerment for them and the lessons that they learn from that.
So if kids at some point, they're going to want to start earning some pocket money, right? So one of the things I say is like, well, let them teach them to fish, right? Don't give them the fish, teach them the fish. So look, if you want to earn your own pocket money, here's a great way to start doing that. And let them be self-actualized, right? So the more I think we pamper and give them, sometimes the weaker they become in terms of their ability to do things. So that's one way to get kids interested. So look, great, hey, you want to earn some pocket money? I recommend you go through this program. I'm happy to answer any questions. And that's one thing. The younger kids are a little bit easier, right? So younger kids, we look at it as almost like parenting projects, parenting kind of, we spend time with the kids, it's almost like build a game in a way. It's an
Yeah.
activity more than anything else. We try and keep it kind of mellow, which is, hey, we've got a great activity, we're going to do this. So that it's for them, it's purely fun, right? It's fun. You're doing stuff together, starting a little business together. They're kind of handing out flyers and doing lemonade stands and that kind of stuff, or car washes. And then as they're earning money, for them, it's going to be like, well, what do I do with this? And then you can have the conversation. We can put it in, we can save it, we can invest it, we can donate it. We go spend it. So even topics like conscious spending, right, which is never taught at any level, even today. Like it's okay to go spend money. Like there's a lot of parents or a lot of kids growing up in households that just can't afford to spend money on things. So they're growing up with the kind of a fear of spending. Then there are kids growing up in households where they overspend. There are kids growing up in households where the conversation is, we don't have enough, we can't afford this. So all of these words are impacting the kids. So this is really a family program. We
Yeah.
simply create the content for the young, the kids and the teens. But this is about increasing the awareness of the topic and opening up room for conversation. We've got kids as young as 8 and 9 asking their parents about, where do we invest? How much interest rate do we get? Do we have any index funds? Do we have any mutual funds? How much credit card debt do we have? So these are the conversations actually happening right now in fundamental families, right? In families that are following, this pathway. And we get so much feedback from parents saying, my 8-year-old, is asking, which charity do we support as a family? Can we as a family pick one charity to get behind? What are we going to do once we make these monies? Where we going to invest money? So these are powerful conversations to have when your kids are young. Imagine they're familiar with these topics, what impact that's going to have as into their future life.
Exactly. Learning the vocabulary of finances from a young age, and kind of going back to what I said about my daughter, it just becomes part of who they are and part of their life, and it's not any big deal. And when I interviewed my younger daughter, who's now 25, but I interviewed her when she was 23, she said, I stepped into young adulthood kind of organically, not being that big a deal that I had to now pay for, all my rent and all this stuff. She said, whereas my peers were freaking out saying, I just want to go back to college. Those were the good days. Not all this responsibility. She said that they had no basic even budgeting skills. So just what she learned, growing up. And then of course the teen program that I taught, both my kids went through, um, was huge, huge. And they both shared that because they had to pay for 30% of their college, room, board, tuition, food, everything, because I had to pay for all of mine. My husband didn't have to pay for his, but I had to pay for all of mine. And I thought, you know what, let's have them have some skin in the game. 30% is still a lot of money. And they both came out of college debt free, no student loans on their part, or our part. And because of that, they were free to take some time. They both have their own businesses now, and not feel the pressure of, I've got to go get a job immediately because I've got to pay my student loans. They have freedom. And so that's one of the big things that they've taken away, is the freedom, from learning these skills over time. But again, even if your children are 11, 12 now, 13, 14, it's not too late at all,
Right.
which is why I started reaching out to the high schoolers. And I actually work with usually the 16, 17, 18, because I have them doing taxes. I have them doing all kinds of very experiential, buying a car, going and looking up cars and buying it, and then saving money and then reinvesting to get a new, buying up their car. And I mean, they're doing it on paper, but all these activities, like you were talking about, kind of more immersion, more experiential of, real life that they can do. And that was one thing that I talked to my kids about, is we were applying from the young ages stuff to their real life, their real desires, their goals, their thoughts, they would come and say, hey, how much do I have in my spendable account? Because we actually moved from the jars to bank accounts at some point, because it got a little bit cumbersome. And it was part of just our life. And so the financial freedom, just jumping back to the financial freedom program, I love the fact that you and the team have included so much of what, we've talked about here, what, I did with my own kids from a young age, what you kind of said that you learned and you realized that you hadn't had. And so a lot of that for the young ages and the high school and beyond, into these courses for the kids and teens, parents don't have to figure all of this out on their own,
Correct.
right?
And not only do they not have to figure it out, at some certain point, kids will don't want to be told by their parents, right? They don't mind being told by other people and TikTok and Instagram and everything else, but they don't really want to be told by their parents. So
Yeah.
really, this is a support tool for parents. It's for parents to understand the vital and critical importance that the kids should need to learn this, but don't necessarily, want to do all the research and try to figure out how to teach this. We basically say, look, let the course do the teaching. You do the questioning. You do the answering the questions. Be available. Support your kids. In doing this. Even if you can spare just an hour a week just to kind of help them, get their business off the ground. Maybe like a weekend project. Is more than adequate. You don't have to be full-time in it with them. I do recommend parents go through the course, because every parent who's gone through the course themselves has said, wow, I learned something from this. And the second thing they say is, I wish I had gone through this course when I was a kid. I mean, bar none. Every parent I've talked to who's taken the time to actually sit there and go through this, I've been blown away by the quality of the program. So look, we're teaching the same context as most adult literacy courses, financial literacy courses, right? With the same subject matters. We just made it a bit more fun. And the other day I was driving with my daughter, and I just had this kind of light bulb moment. I said, it's fascinating. Being in the kind of the business development speaking world, any event you go to, one of the questions that often asked is, how many of you in the audience want to make more money? And almost 100% of the hands in the room will go up, right? Everybody's there to make more money when you go to these kind of workshops. But the reality is, while everybody wants to make more money, very few people want to invest their time learning about money. And I do not believe that you can become financially wealthy. Now you can learn how to you can make money. There's a lot of people who made a lot of money who've lost a lot of money because they didn't understand the fundamentals. It's not a question of, do I do this? Do I not do this? It's, if you're not going to do this, what are you going to do? Right? If this isn't the program for you, that's okay. But you better, as a parent, to be doing something to teach these skills to your kids. Because if you look at statistics today, 60% or more are going to be heading into some form of financial challenges if in the future. And I think it's only going to get tougher. I
Yeah.
honestly think that that percentage rate is far too low and is dampening the looming challenges that our kids of today are going to be facing, because fewer jobs, advent of technology and AI, there's a lot of things that are going to change rapidly in the next 5-10 years. And if we're not preparing our kids to think smart, it's going to be challenging.
Exactly. And you bring up a good point. If we can help parents and get their kids engaged in something like this, they are just strengthening them for the future that is coming. The future is coming, whether you're prepared or not, the future is coming. And I mean, I really believe that, like I said, all these concepts that are in this financial freedom program, they strengthen the individual, they strengthen the family, they strengthen marriages, they strengthen society, because you'll have people who know about the basics, the fundamentals, and how to apply, and then how to pivot when necessary, when something comes along that needs, they need to make some kind of course correction or adjustment.
Absolutely. One of the biggest reasons for divorces is money, right?
Hmm.
So and so that means that one of both partners, they haven't figured it out as a couple. They haven't figured this topic of money out, and thus their relationship has been impacted,
Yeah.
often leading to divorce. So it's embedded anywhere. Mental health, for a lot of adults, it's based on money issues.
Yeah.
Emotional trauma is based on money issues. Even health, physical well-being, right? A lot of people want to go to a gym. They want to have more time to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
But so I got to make money. I'm so busy making money, or needing to pay my rent and pay my bills. I don't have time to eat healthy. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time because I got to pay my bills. So,
Mm.
yes, money doesn't bring you happiness, but it makes life a lot easier. That enables us to be happy, or choose a way of happiness. Sooner or later, we're going to have to take on this subject matter. And to me,
Yeah.
it's like everything else. The younger we start our relationship with money, the better it's going to be for their future.
Absolutely. I actually went to a wedding, and the couple, the 25-year-old and the 24-year-old, sat down at the table I was at and said, "Mrs. Rumpert, can you like tell us, like, what should we be doing with our money?" This was the bride and groom. That was what was on their mind. And they were in their mid-20s and they didn't know what to do. And again, it just goes back to the fundamentals, which is why when I found this financial freedom program, I was like, oh, it's got everything in it. Both the kid version, which is animated, fun, engaging for the kids. It's got the entrepreneurial piece where they can start these businesses, and then the teen version that is going to engage them and be very relevant for them and give them the opportunity for entrepreneurial ventures as well. And then as the parent, you're going through this and you're like, oh, yeah, I kind of knew that, but in this way, it's kind of hitting me afresh, and I could have a conversation with my child about that. And as you mentioned, as the kids get older, maybe they don't want to hear from the parents as much, but the younger you start with this is what I found. It becomes just part of your family.
Yeah,
And
it's and we just feel that it's a company where it was still in early stages. The content's been out there for a year now. We've got kind of we're getting some feedback from parents and what they like, what they didn't like, and it's overall it's been fantastic feedback. But now we're like, okay, how do we make it more engaging? So now the new platform, it includes reward-based rewarding activities. The rewards get turned into tokens. The tokens get stored in a wallet. So we are simulating real-world conversations. As these kids are growing up, they're going to hear about crypto and Bitcoin and these things, and start asking. So even though we don't have a cryptocurrency yet, they'll get the experience of earning tokens and keeping it in their wallet. And we'll have an exchange where we'll actually allow kids to go buy physical products in the exchange. We're going to be having our own very own, like, Shark Tank. We call it the fundable zone. So kids who go through the program will get a chance to present businesses, their business, to real investors. We call them fund
wow.
investors, and actually get feedback from investors on how they pitched, how their presentation was, and actually earn money from real investors. So that's all part of the experience we're creating. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I did not know that. I
Yeah, that's all coming. We're just literally weeks away from launching a new platform. Probably by the time a lot of people are maybe even hearing this, it'll be out there. But yeah, every 90 days or so, we'll have these kind of fundable zone live events where kids can just kind of stand up and pitch to real investors. It's gonna be exciting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, the course in and of itself already to me was blowing my mind. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts that you might have for parents on the legacy that they may be leaving through this, or getting started early, or just about financial freedom? Any other thoughts that you might have?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, we have to make a choice as parents, right? It's a choice that we let the school system do their thing. And, as I said, a lot of these fundamentals are not being taught or not being taught well. And it's not the school's fault, not teachers' fault. It's the system, right?
Hmm.
Or we let the kids figure out themselves and say, look, and which you can. But, as parents, I mean, you asked about the why and a purpose. And
Yeah.
one of my whys and purposes is to me is like, the moment we choose to be parents, that is a very core part of our why. It's we are choosing this role of being a parent and being a guide to this next generation. And to
Yeah.
just hope that the kids will figure it out is kind of taking on taking a risk. Let's do everything we can as parents to point our kids in the direction of success. And that means, being a little bit more active in teaching them the fundamentals for successful living. Even though we've created this content for the kids, we want to create a support mechanism for parents, and not just in this area of finance, but in other areas. So fundamental parenting is a Facebook group where we just kind of, we share information, we share, wins. Parents can kind of share what wins that they're having with their kids. But also we have a kind of fundamental parenting webinar series where people can kind of actually watch, or every month, every few weeks, we'll invite a guest on that will have a topic they're going to share that will help parents be better parents, and thus help parents support their kids being more successful in their life.
Awesome. That's a huge blessing, as well, in addition to the course, for sure. So, well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and just kind of allowing to share our story and where we're going with the financial freedom and both fundamental campus as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, for those who are interested, I've listed the link to the Financial Freedom Program below, where you can watch an informational webinar about it. It goes into a little more specifics. So if you have any questions, reach out, and you can check out my Facebook group, which is called Catalytic Kids, Catalytic with a K. And I'm happy to support you with this as well. All right, guys. Thanks. Take care.